Hey, this is Double R. I wanted to tell you that Anchor by Spotify is a great and easy way to make a podcast with everything you need and all in one place. Anchor has the tools to allow you to record, edit your podcast straight from your phone or your computer. When hosting with Anchor, you can distribute your podcast to all listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Best of all, it's totally free. So go down the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. This is the Let's Roll Podcast with your host, Double R. What up, everybody? It's your host that rolls the most, Double R, and this is the Let's Roll Podcast. Today would be 15 years of being married before I got divorced. But yes, today we're going to talk about my wedding day, some of the funny things that happened, what it was like for me to get married, and much more. And we're going to do all of that right after this. So, today would have been my 15th wedding anniversary, but back in 2016, I decided that I couldn't be married anymore for a lot of different reasons. None of them are the reasons that you think most people would get divorced for. But most of those reasons for getting divorced were not what your typical reasons were. But there were multiple reasons, and I'm not going to get into that part. That's not what this episode's about. This episode is about me talking about the day we got married. Now, I've said in the past that I married a woman that was legally blind, so she had a disability, and then I have a physical disability, so I am wheelchair bound and use a wheelchair. So, and I've also mentioned in other episodes how I, starting off or growing up, I didn't really want to be around other people that had disabilities. But that being said, it wasn't until I got older, until I met my ex-wife, that I was more comfortable about being around other people with disabilities and learning about other disabilities along the way. And with two different disabilities coming together and getting married, there was a lot of things that we had to adjust to. We had to learn to learn each other. In most relationships, you're going to learn each other anyway, not necessarily about a disability, but just, your attitude toward things, your beliefs in things, et cetera, et cetera. Ours was a lot more than that because now we are bringing in two disabilities into the picture and learning what each other can and cannot do and so forth. But originally I was going to do this episode with my ex-wife, but she decided she wasn't really comfortable in doing it, and it was fine, and I didn't push her to do it, but I did get permission from her to do it and talk about it. So if you're listening out there, happy non-anniversary. But we are today good friends. We sorry about that. I'm having a little bit of allergies, but we're to this day we're good friends, and we still talk to each other, and we can have the longest conversations than anybody that I know of. We don't hang out with each other, obviously. She did remarry, and I will be getting remarried soon, but I'm keeping all that private for now. But anyway, like I said, 15 years ago was the day that we got married, and I remember leading up to getting married and all the planning and stuff. I pretty much let her have what she wanted. And my thinking was that one of the things that I realized looking back is that the reason I got married when I did was when I wanted to get married, but what kind of pushed me to do it quicker was I had lost two family members back to back in a matter of 6 months. One was my grandmother, and one was my father. And it kind of freaked me out a little bit too, where I thought if I don't get married now, I'm not, I won't have anybody around to see anything. I mean, I don't know why I thought that. I mean, obviously people are going to die, and some are going to die sooner than later and unexpectedly, and you just don't know who's going to live, who's not going to live. But I guess at that particular moment, it was just like, I need to do this. And another thing that kind of put the ball in motion, so to speak, is that my dad was the second person to die. The two family members. My dad was the second one to die. And we were doing his obituary, and my aunt was, got to the part where he survived by blah, blah, blah. And it got to me, and they wanted to include my wife, or my girlfriend, my ex-wife, and we didn't want to say girlfriend or, because it didn't insinuate that she was family. Now, at this time, I had not asked her to marry me, and asked her to get married at all. I think we might have had talked about it a little bit, but not really, And my aunt just said, "Well, how about I just put her in there as your fiance?" Well, now you put it out in the public that she's my fiance. Well, that's kind of pushing me towards I got to ask her. So I believe, and again, I wish my ex-wife was here. I believe that I asked her actually twice. I think I asked her one time at the apartment we shared together, and I asked her to marry me. And I think she said yes that day. And then I kind of asked her again in front of family members, because then I had gotten some wedding rings that she didn't know about. So I got her an engagement ring and stuff. And I'm not ashamed to say this, but the initial set that I got was at Walmart. And I probably paid maybe $300 for the whole set. And that was her engagement ring, her wedding band, and my wedding band. So I had the ring with me. And so I asked her in front of the family member, I think it was around Christmas time. I asked her in front of the family members to marry me, and I put the ring on her finger, and she absolutely, said yes in front of everybody. So then we moved on to planning the wedding, and I didn't have any particular things that I really wanted or cared about. So I pretty much left it at her. Whatever she wanted to pick out, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The first thing that was hard to find was a wedding venue. And I believe we originally wanted to get married on 7/7/2007. Well, that was a popular date that year. And so we couldn't find a venue for that. We eventually found a venue that worked because they had the wedding venue to have the ceremony, and then they had the reception hall. So, so we found the venue, and that worked out. And then, of course, as everybody knows that have been listening to this podcast, I'm a mobile DJ, so I have all the DJ equipment. Well, I, suggested that I get a friend of mine to just run my equipment and DJ the reception. And my wife kind of went, no, or my fiance at the time, but she said no, because you're going to worry about your equipment, getting packed up the way you want it packed up and back to where you want to, take it and blah, blah. So instead of you trying to do the DJing, let's hire a DJ. And so I had to give in on that one. And I'll get back into that in a minute. the only thing that I wanted done, and it was based on a friend of hers, but I wanted everybody's or all the girls' makeup to be done the same. I didn't want it to leave it up to the individual girls to do their own makeup. Um, so I told my ex-wife at the time. I said, "Look, I'll buy everybody a set of makeup, the same makeup. Everybody's gonna wear the same makeup, the same color, whatever you all decide to pick out. It has to be all the same. And then I want somebody to do the makeup." And we did ask my best man's wife at the time, asked if she would help with all the makeup and make sure everybody got the same type of makeup on and all that. And she did, but some people still did their own makeup, but they still, even though they did their own makeup, they did it with the makeup that we had bought and provided. um, then we went through the process of finding a caterer, which we went with a Mexican restaurant in the town of Tomball, and they provided two different. They did catering. They didn't just do Mexican style catering, but it was a Mexican restaurant that had catering. So we basically had two different types of plates. We had one with steak and one with chicken, and then those two main courses each had their own. Or we had four other sides. So like steak had, we'll say, mashed potatoes and something, and the chicken had something else, something. So you could swap the sides around, but we provided two different meats or two main plates because I was like, for the price they were giving us, it worked out great because we were able to do two different types of meals without costing us double the money. So it worked out. Now, the problem with the catering when it came down to the wedding, and this was one of the first things that happened at our wedding, was that the caterer, when they left to come to the wedding, on the paperwork, they had two different addresses. One of them was our actual place where we lived, and by then we had moved into a mobile home. So we were in a mobile home in a mobile home park by the time we were getting closer to getting married. So they had that address for our home, and then they had the address for the venue, and they went to the home address first, so that which made them late. So that was one thing that happened. I'll get back to that in a little bit when I get into the more of the timeline of what happened. So we got that done. One of the things I'll touch on is, again, I'll go back to saying that I left a lot of things up to my ex-wife to decide what she wanted and, who she wanted as bridesmaids and blah, blah, blah. And the only thing that she asked me for was, could her brother be one of my groomsmen, which I agreed to. Well, originally, I had a friend of mine, which people have heard on this podcast, T. Rich. You've heard him on other episodes of the podcast, and he will be more regular when he can fit it into his schedule. But T. Rich was my first option, my first choice to be my best man. Now, not to get deep into this or anything, but based on his race, unfortunately, my new in-laws had a problem with it. And I'm not going to try to talk bad about it or anything. They just didn't like the fact of his race. And as y'all all know, he is a black gentleman. Well, at first, I was like, I don't care if they have a problem. This is my wedding too. And I'm going to pick the person I want to pick. And if it's a problem, it's a problem. So be it. So I had that attitude until my wife, or I'll just say my wife, makes it easier because I keep forgetting to say ex-wife. But anyway, my wife came to me and said, hey, my parents basically said if you have T Rich as your best man, they were not coming to the wedding at all. And I kind of looked at her. I was like, "Are you serious?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, I just kind of sighed about it because I was like, I don't understand. Not to get on the sidetrack here, but I just don't understand the mentality of people that don't like you just because of the way you look or the way you are. I just don't get it. And I guess a part of me has learned over the years that even though I have never experienced racism, but I have experienced discrimination, which is basically one and the same to a certain degree. I know it's not exactly the same, but people discriminated against me because the way I am or the way I look or, just physically look at me like I'm less than anything. So I was kind of frustrated at this point because I wanted him to be in my wedding. So I thought about it some more, and I was on the verge to just saying, "Nope, he's going to be in the wedding. I don't care if your parents want to show up or not. That's their loss." But the more I thought about it, I thought about back when my brother got married and how his in-laws, before they became his in-laws, but his wife's family, pretty much none of them came to the wedding because they didn't like my brother at the time. Now, years later, they, developed, a liking for him. I don't know if they fully ever accepted him, but I don't know that for sure. But I remember how messed up it was for her and, just basically her immediate family. Like, she hardly had any family there, if any, that I can remember. My own father walked her down the aisle. So I kind of looked at my situation and went, I'm not gonna put the woman I'm about to marry and love do the same thing. Even though I'm giving up on something that I want, I just didn't want that to be her memory. So before I even asked T Rich or TT, I went to him. I think I met him at work or at the hospital, at a hospital or something. If I remember right, I think his brother was in the hospital, and I went up to meet him up there, just so I could talk to him real quick. So I talked to him and I explained the situation. Now, as y'all have heard, and if you haven't, go back and make sure you check out all the episodes that me and TT have done, and you will understand how our friendship is. TT and me, we click. There's no like racism or anything like that between us. Like, he knows if somebody was to ever tell him Rusty's a racist, he would have said no, he's not, because he knows me well enough. He knows that that's not where I come from. That's not what not what I'm about. So when I told him about the situation, he understood. And he said, "Man, don't worry about it. I get you, and I got you. Don't worry about it. It's okay." And he could tell how upset I was about it because I really didn't want to make that decision. I wanted to keep him as my choice. But that being said, I made the decision not to do it. So he was not my best man. And I ended up going with my other friend that I work with, named Steve, and he became my best man. So we got everything pretty much worked out. And the day of the wedding, or the night before, well, we did the rehearsal dinner and the rehearsal. I think the day before, we had it at another Mexican food restaurant, and then we went to the venue to do the rehearsal. And the thing about that, and the reason I bring that up, is that we had some music that we were going to play during the ceremony. So there was music, obviously different music for people, the different, excuse me, there was music for the different, party, or, like the the bridal party and the groomsmen come in. Then we had some other music for something else. And then there was one song that when the preacher got to a certain point and he paused, this song would play. Well, everything worked great in rehearsal. We got it all down, and one of the things that the pastor or preacher that told me and my wife was, and I use this advice even when I'm dealing with clients for DJing a wedding. He basically said to us, he said, look, if anything ever goes wrong during the ceremony or during your event, act like that was supposed to happen. Like, don't panic, don't show panic, just don't insinuate that it's a problem, right? Well, with that being said, the next day we're doing the ceremony, and the first thing that um, kind of happened was we had a little dog named Pippi, which I talked about in an episode, and she was our ring bearer. Now, remember going back, I had bought these rings from Walmart. Well, as we kind of got closer to the wedding, I even told my wife at the time, I said, if I ever have a chance to upgrade the rings, I will. Well, I had a chance, and I upgraded them significantly. So I had a new set of rings. So what we ended up doing is I got my future mother-in-law in on getting the old ring, the old engagement ring from my wife, with the excuse that I was going to have the wedding band and the engagement ring attached before the wedding, so they'd be one piece. But that's not really what was going to happen. What was going to happen was I got that ring and stuff, and we put those rings on a little pillow my mom made to fit the dog, and the dog even had a little wedding bell, like a wedding bell type dress thing on. And my aunt had the dog outside the venue or the wedding chapel, so my wife wouldn't be aware that Pippi was even there. Well, while my aunt was outside with Pippi, my wedding band, the cheap one, came off the pillow and was lost outside, which was not a problem, but we found out later. We realized that my band was missing. And so when it was time to bring Pippi in, Pippi's a little Italian a miniature Italian Greyhound rat terrier mix dog. So she was not super small, but she was a small dog, but she was kind of skittish, especially when all these people started to react when the dog came in and was coming down the aisle. Well, I, not thinking, or not, I'll just say I wasn't thinking. My wife is legally blind, so she can't see what truly is going on. So she doesn't realize that it's Pippi, and I'm trying to tell her it's Pippi bringing the rings, but she can't hear me because all the people are going, all that. So that was one thing that happened. That the dog thing didn't go off as totally planned. It wasn't terrible by any means, but it didn't go off as planned. And so then the ceremony goes on, and we get to that one part that went perfectly in the rehearsal. And we get to the part, preacher says whatever, da da da. He pauses, and the song comes on, and it comes on okay, and then all of a sudden it's a CD, and it hits a skip point where it just, and my wife is squeezing my hand so hard, and she's going, "It is skipping, it is skipping," and I looked at the preacher and said, like, motioned to him to go on because I knew somebody's going to stop it because there was no way nobody was not going to stop that because it was this. And it didn't last very long. Somebody did just stop it and turn it off. So that was one thing. And now I found out that my wife had switched the CDs from the one that we used the night before to this new one. I don't even know why she did that, but that's what happened. So the one that we used the night before was perfect. The new one got messed up when it was being burnt or something like that. So that was one thing that happened. Then once the ceremony was over, another thing that happened. I had arranged for a horse and carriage um, to bring to pick me and my wife up after the ceremony when we went out of the chapel, that we would give in this horse and carriage and ride to the reception. The problem was somebody saw the horse and carriage before my wife knew about it and then told her about it. So that kind of ruined that surprise a little bit. But what was cool, though, was they used the horse and carriage to bring her and her bridesmaids to the chapel. And this was all in one big venue setting. So it was a big parking lot. So they got to ride just a little bit to where we were inside, where we were getting married. So that kind of ruined the main surprise, though, because we were going to get in it and ride. They were going to take us on a little bit of a ride, before we got to the reception. We did use it to go back to the reception hall, but we didn't go on a long ride. It was so hot that we just went from the chapel to where our uh, reception was. But on the way there, that's when we found out that the caterer was running late because they went to the wrong address. And I'm like, I don't want to hear this. But anyway, they eventually showed up. So we had to kind of stall long enough for them to get there and get set up and get to a point where they could serve. And so we came into the reception hall. We used the Imperial March because my wife was a big Star Wars fan, and we used Darth Vader's Imperial March to come in on. And then, since we had to kill time, we went ahead and did a fake leave for people to can use their bubbles and all that, so we could get pictures on that. Um, and I think we did some of the other things, like maybe it's kind of a blur now, but I'm pretty sure that we did kind of the dances that we need to get out of the way. Um, and so another funny thing that happened. Now, this is not something that went bad by any means, but I still will never forget this. My nephew, people got up to do toast, and so my best man gave his toast, and I liked his deal because he had this long little toast thing, and he got to a point where he told me to put my hand on top of her hand, and the punchline was, "This is the last time you'll have the upper hand." And everybody kind of laughed about that one. And then my nephew got on the mic, and he started off really good, but then he wanted to try to make a joke and kind of be funny. Now, my sense of humor, I laughed. But deep down inside, I knew that joke did not go over well with her side of the family, and possibly even some on my side of the family. But I would say mainly it's probably her side, just because I knew him well enough to know. Once he said that, I almost like, oh my god. But basically, what he said was he couldn't wait for me and my wife to have kids of our own with little kids, little blind kids in wheelchairs rolling around. Now, I kind of found it funny and I joked. Even my wife kind of laughed a little bit. But man, I looked over where her parents and her brother and everybody were, and they were not laughing at all. They did not like that. And I kind of got it. It was just, they didn't like people or things making fun of their daughter and their daughter's disability. And I got that. And it was kind of not appropriate necessarily to say it there, but it happened. I didn't know he was going to say it. It just kind of a surprise. But he said it, and it was kind of funny, So, and then let's see, what was the next thing that kind of, um, I think the only other thing that kind of, what again, this last part was after the wedding was all done, said and done. We had a limo that was going to take us from our venue to the hotel that was by the airport because we were going to Vegas the next day. But we had this limo for like 4 hours. And so we didn't get out of there until probably about 10 or 11 o'clock, if I can remember right. And so we get in the limo and we drive off. And so we need to use the limo time. But by then we were both so exhausted, and especially my wife at the time. She was like, she basically just fell asleep. And so this limo driver is just kind of taking us on a little scenic road trip, drives clear to downtown and starts pointing out things that me and her both know because we both lived in Texas and in Houston our whole life. So there's nothing you're showing me that I ain't never seen before. And I just finally told the driver, I said, look, I know we have you, for a certain amount of time, but she's passed out, tired. I'm getting tired. Just take us on to the hotel because we got to get up in the morning and catch our flight. So they were cool about it and they took us. So it was kind of a waste, but again, it was fun to do that. Also, going back to the DJ situation, that was one other thing that didn't ruin anything, but as a mobile DJ, I found it very unprofessional that the DJ that we originally wanted, and I get it, things happen. He wasn't able to DJ, so they sent somebody else with their company to DJ for us. Again, I understand circumstances get in the way, but I was kind of irritated that we didn't get the person that we wanted because the person that we wanted was the guy that actually worked for the wedding venue, but he also worked for a mobile DJ business, and he's the one that signed, sold us on everything. And so he said he was a DJ, and this is kind of a funny part of this because I told him, I said, hey, look, man, I'm a mobile DJ, so don't try to get something over on me on pricing. And I said, so how much is it going to cost us? Blah, blah, blah. Well, he gave me the price, and I almost fell out of my chair. Not because it was expensive, because I never really had charged that much when I DJed. For the longest time, I charged like about $300 for 4 hours. And he tells me, oh, it's $750. And I'm like, what? But at the time, she didn't want me to DJ. She didn't want me to give any of my friends to DJ. So I said, okay. And so I went ahead and went with the DJ. Now, going back to the part where he wasn't able to do it, they sent somebody else. I went to that DJ before everything was, setting off. Or maybe I got the disc to him beforehand. And I had a particular song that I wanted to play at a particular point, and instead of playing my song that I provided to him on a desk, he takes it upon himself to change the song and tries to convince me it's a better song. And I didn't want to argue and didn't want to make a big fuss about it, but I am very prideful when it comes to DJing. And if a customer's asking me to do something, especially if they provided me with the music and they want a specific song for a specific reason at a specific time, then I'm doing that for them. I'm not changing that. I might not like the song. I might not think it's the right song to play for what they're wanting, but it's not my choice. It's my customer's choice. So I make sure the customer gets what they want. And in this particular case, I didn't get what I wanted. But again, it didn't ruin anything. The only other thing that happened that could have ruined things, but I told my family just to let it go, was that we didn't have any alcohol at our wedding, but there were some people within, but not both of our families. I'll say our family, but there were people that were going out and getting alcohol out of their car and bringing it back in, like pouring it in their cups. But uh, I think my mom or somebody found out, and they were about to go over and say something and tell them that they had to leave. But I said, no, just let it go. Like, don't even. This is not the time or place to start anything like that. So, but we did know that was, happening, and it's unfortunate that people can't um, respect people's wishes. That they have to do what they feel they want to do, and they can do it, whatever. But again, it didn't ruin anything. It's just that we made it a point that there would be no alcohol at our wedding. But anyway, we got through the wedding, got in the limo, went to the hotel, checked in, and the next morning we woke up and caught our plane to Vegas and went and spent. I think we originally were going to spend 7 days in Vegas, and we ended up coming home like on the sixth day or something like that. We came home early because uh, of different reasons, but we just decided to come home early. We did pick Vegas because Vegas was probably the easiest for us in our situation because we were going to go somewhere where neither one of us could drive because I wouldn't have my car. She couldn't drive. And we needed a place that we could have fun and enjoy ourselves, but we needed to be able to get around. So we picked Vegas and we stayed on the strip, which was really cool because we could go to all the casinos and hotels, and they're pretty much all connected together on both sides. But you go on, they had a monorail that would run on one side and another monorail that ran on the other side. And the only thing that we had to do at one point was cross over to the other side, and instead of crossing a big, busy, crazy highway, there was a overpass walkway that you could go to the other side. So it worked out. We had fun. We saw several shows. Um, we bought a bunch of stuff to bring back with us. I would say if I had a tip for anybody, and we didn't do this, but we thought about doing it, was all the stuff that we bought to bring home to either bring home for us or bring home for other people. We thought about instead of it trying to pack it in a bag and 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 get it home, we were gonna ship it home. And we thought about packing it all up, like going to a UPS and packing it all up and just ship it back home. So by the time we got home, it'd be there. But we didn't do that. We ended up buying like another big like gym bag that had wheels on it, and we filled that up and checked that in. It cost us a little bit, but I would have rather have sent it home and not worry about it. But that was my wedding day, and just some of the challenges we went through, and I wanted to just talk about it because it was our anniversary, or today is our anniversary. Uh, at the time of me recording this episode, I'm recording it Wednesday, It might be Thursday now, but this will come out Thursday morning, and that would have been our 15th wedding anniversary. I touched on it a little bit in the beginning that I ended the marriage for a lot of several reasons. But the main thing I wanted to do and made sure I did is ended it without having resentment towards her or even myself uh, for trying to stay into something that was not working. We loved each other, and I love her to this day. Um, but we didn't really work as a married couple. We tried, and I'll admit that we tried. She tried, and I tried, and it was there was too many variables that we fought against. And the big thing that I've always said, and I thought that we did, or maybe at least I did, was we were really good friends before we got married, really into each other, but we didn't bring that friendship into our marriage. It was like, we're friends, now we're a married couple, and now we have to do things differently, which is not necessarily true. You need to bring some of that you built on at the beginning into your marriage to keep your relationship strong and not totally change how you perceived each other. And I think that's what ended up. There's a lot of reasons why it didn't work out. But at the time, I needed to move on. I didn't initially want to get a divorce. I wanted to just separate and get some separation between us, but it didn't work out that way. But now looking back, and we both have discussed this, we do realize that it was probably the best thing that happened. She's moved on. She's got a new man. She's married, and she's happy, and I'm glad she's happy. Again, I said I was going to be getting married pretty soon, but I'm not going to indulge any of those details as of right now. But hopefully that's going to work out, and I can kind of move on too. I do miss my ex-wife. I do miss the times that we did, spend together, like going out and shopping and stuff. And we've talked about getting together and, getting some dinner or something like that. But I told her, I said, look, we can't do that just me and you. You're married now, so that's not going to work. But if we can get some of our old friends together and go out and have a nice dinner with a group of friends, that would be cool and fun, because I miss the little family we kind of had when we were together with several of our friends, real close friends that were around. But that being said, thank you for letting me share my wedding day and experience with you. And to my ex-wife, happy anniversary. Love you, and I wish nothing but the best for you. And make sure you check out the letsrollpodcast.com. And another little tidbit here before I totally end this. Good Pod, which is a streaming platform for podcasts. We currently are in the top 100 on 2 different lists. And one of them is Indie Leisure Podcast. I believe we are 80, I think we're like 87 or 86, I believe. And on the other list, it's just Leisure Podcast. We're like 60, I think. Hang on, let me see if I can find that real quick. Okay, I had to grab my phone real quick. Okay, it says, congratulations to the Let's Roll podcast, hosted by Double R, has made the following top listener charts on Good Pods. We are 63 in the top 100 indie leisure chart, and we're 87 in the top 100 leisure chart. So I want to thank everybody that has helped us reach that milestone. That was kind of surprising. I got that email, I think last night, and that was a surprise. And it just means that I'm doing a good job, and I want to keep it up so you have something to listen to. With all that being said, as always, until next time, let's roll.
Hey, this is Paula, and you're listening to the Let's Roll podcast with host Double R. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media. Find links in the description below or at theletsrollpodcast.com.